The arrival. The fog pressed in so thick it felt alive. Clara slowed the car to a crawl, her headlights carving nothing but two pale cones that dissolved barely 10 feet ahead. She gripped the wheel tighter, knuckles whitening as the road curved sharply left and a weather-worn wooden sign emerged from the mist. "Welcome to Jirowabaroki," it declared in peeling white paint. Beneath it, someone had scratched deep gouges into the wood with something sharp. The words looked less like vandalism and more like claw marks. Below the welcome message, another phrase had been scrawled in crimson spray paint that bled downward in streaks. "Stay as long as you can." Clara felt her stomach twist. Not stay as long as you want. Not stay a while. It was a command. A trap. She flicked on her wipers even though no rain had fallen. The streak across the windshield smeared the fog's condensation into something viscous, almost oily. She frowned, leaning forward. Her editor's voice echoed in her mind. "One more dead end, Clara, and that's it. You're finished here." She'd already been finished, truth be told. The marriage that imploded 2 months ago had left her aimless, restless, chewing on her own regrets like broken glass. Graybrook had been a desperate lead, a rural town whispered about in online forums where disappearances piled up like autumn leaves and where the state's missing persons database carried gaps no one seemed to care about. Clara cared. She needed to. If she couldn't salvage her career, maybe she could salvage herself. She drove past the sign, deeper into the fog. Trees pressed close on both sides, their skeletal branches rattling in the unseen wind. The silence gnawed at her. Not a single cricket. Not a single owl. Just the low hum of her engine. When she finally reached the town square, it emerged slowly, like an old photograph dipped in water. The outlines of storefronts, gas lamps that sputtered faint orange flames, a handful of figures moving at a dreamlike pace. Her car felt obscene here, its headlights too modern, its hum too intrusive. She parked beside what looked like an inn, though its sign swung on rusted chains so violently she half expected it to tear free. The words "the hearthstone" were almost illegible under decades of grime. Clara killed the engine. The sudden silence dropped over her like a coffin lid. For a moment she didn't move. The air smelled damp, earthy, but beneath it lurked another scent, faint, sour, metallic. Like pennies soaked in stagnant water. Then she climbed out. The inn's door resisted when she pushed, groaning like something wounded. Inside, the lobby glowed with amber lamplight. A fire snapped faintly in a stone hearth, though no heat seemed to reach her. A man appeared behind the counter, startlingly quickly, as though he'd been waiting just beyond sight. "Evening," he said. His voice was gravel dragged across wood. His smile was polite, but it never reached his eyes. "You must be the new arrival." Clara froze. How does he know I'm new? She thought. Clara, she managed. Clara Vance. I called earlier. Yes, the innkeeper said smoothly. Your room is ready. Top of the stairs, second on the right. You'll find the town quiet. Safe. The way he said safe made her skin crawl. Thanks, Clara murmured. She slid a folded bill across the counter. His fingers lingered on hers a fraction too long when he took it. Cold fingers. Damp, as though he'd just washed his hands and hadn't dried them. Her room was simple. A brass bed, lace curtains yellowed with age, a writing desk scarred with old gouges. She dropped her bag, sat, exhaled. The silence buzzed. She pulled out her notebook, flipping to a clean page, and wrote the first entry of her Graybrook file. Fog thicker than any I've seen. Locals evasive? Too early to tell. Innkeeper, unsettling. Keep an eye on him. She stopped. Listen. Floorboards creaked overhead. Clara frowned. Her room was on the top floor. No one should be walking above her. The sound came again, slow, deliberate steps. Pause. Another creak closer. Her throat tightened. She forced a laugh under her breath. Old houses settle, that's all. She crossed the room, pushed open the wardrobe. Empty. She crouched, checked under the bed. Just nothing more. But the steps above her head did not stop. She went back to the notebook, pen poised, her pulse beating too hard to think. The firelight from the hearth below flickered through the floorboards, casting faint trembling lines across her walls. Then, a whisper. Not words, not at first. Just the cadence of someone murmuring directly overhead. Then the faint drag of something across the wood. Not footsteps now. Something heavier. Clara's skin crawled. She rose, heart slamming against her ribs. The room seemed smaller suddenly, the air thicker, each breath catching in her throat. She reached for her bag, pulling out the small flashlight she always carried. Its beam quivered with her hand as she aimed it at the ceiling. "Hello," she whispered, hating how frail her voice sounded. The whispering stopped. Silence. Then, 3 sharp knocks directly above her. Clara staggered back, nearly tripping over the bed. Her mind scrambled for logic. Maybe another guest? A storage loft? Old pipes? But no explanation made sense of those knocks. The innkeeper's words echoed again, safe. She swallowed hard, gathered her things, and forced herself out of the room. The hall was long, lined with closed doors, their brass handles glinting faintly in the low light. No sound now. No footsteps. No whispers. Her eyes drifted to the attic door at the end of the corridor. It was nothing more than a square cut in the ceiling with a dangling cord. Her pulse thudded. Every part of her screamed, "Don't look." But Clara Vance had built her life, and lost her marriage, on not turning away. She crept down the hall, the floor moaning under each step, until she reached the attic cord. Her hand trembled as she reached up, brushed it. Something scuttled rapidly above, right to left, too fast to be footsteps, too heavy to be a rat. She jerked her hand back, heart hammering, and stumbled 2 steps down the hall. Silence again. Then, from directly above, a voice whispered, low, rasping, unmistakable. "Clara." The sound sank through her like ice water. It knew her name. Her flashlight flickered, dimmed, then died. Clara did not sleep. She sat upright in her narrow brass bed until the first streaks of morning pried through the lace curtains. Her flashlight clutched uselessly in her hand. Every time her eyelids drooped, she'd hear that whisper again. Her name, drawn out as though someone were mouthing it directly into her ear. She never worked up the nerve to tug the attic cord. If something was waiting up there, she wasn't ready to see it. By dawn, the whispers had stopped, leaving only a brittle silence. But the impression remained, like a stain burned into her brain. Someone or something knew her name. The innkeeper greeted her at breakfast with that same stiff smile. He moved too quietly for a man his size, his footsteps swallowed before they hit the floor. "Sleep well?" he asked. Clara lied automatically. "Fine." His smile widened, showing too many teeth. Good. Most find our town very restful." She stirred her coffee, letting the silence linger. She wanted to confront him about the attic, but what then? He'd deny it. Or worse, confirm it. Instead, she changed the subject. "Where might I find records around here? Historical archives, newspapers, that kind of thing?" The innkeeper's eyes flicked briefly toward the church at the center of town, its white steeple half shrouded by fog even in daylight. "Our reverend keeps documents. Old town records. He's a steward of Greybrook's history." "Perfect," Clara said, scribbling a note. "I'll pay him a visit." The innkeeper's smile faltered for just an instant. Then it returned, stiff as ever. "Of course. But first I recommend walking the square. Meet the good folk of Greybrook. They'll make you feel right at home." His tone made it sound like a warning rather than an invitation. The town square was a place suspended in time. Gas lamps lined the brick paths. Shops bore hand-painted signs for butcher, tailor, pharmacy. Every pane of glass carried a faint film of dust, as though no one had touched them in years. Yet people moved behind the counters, quietly tending their businesses. Clara entered the bakery first. The air smelled faintly sweet, but underneath lingered that same sour metallic tang she'd noticed upon arrival. The woman behind the counter, gray-haired and aproned, smiled with the same rehearsed politeness as the innkeeper. "Morning," the woman said. Clara ordered a roll, more for conversation than hunger. "Beautiful town you've got here," she tried. The woman's smile never wavered. "We're blessed. Greybrook is blessed." "With what?" "Pause. Peace." Clara bit into the roll. It was flavorless, textureless, like bread left too long in a freezer. She forced a swallow. "I'm a journalist," she said lightly, watching the woman's eyes. "I'm writing about towns like this one. History, local legends. Heard you've had your share of disappearances over the years." The woman's expression didn't change, but her hands stilled against the counter. "Every town loses people now and then." "Sure," Clara pressed, "but I read a state report that said Greybrook had 57 disappearances in the last 70 years. For a town this size, that's—" The woman's hand shot out, gripping Clara's wrist. Her skin was clammy, her grip too strong. "You shouldn't ask questions like that," she said, voice low. Clara froze, pulse thudding. The woman's smile returned a heartbeat later, as though the outburst had never happened. She released Clara's wrist. "Enjoy your roll, dear." Clara left the bakery shaken, rubbing her wrist. She spent the day circling the square, speaking to shopkeepers, passers-by, anyone who would give her a word. The pattern was the same: warmth that rang hollow, eyes that flicked toward the church whenever her questions got too pointed, and an almost scripted insistence that Greybrook was a safe, peaceful town. By mid-afternoon, her notebook brimmed with names, fragments of overheard phrases, and crude sketches of symbols she'd spotted carved faintly into door frames. Circles intersected by jagged lines, always 3 in a row. Protective wards? Or warnings? The church loomed over it all. White clapboard siding, tall windows, its steeple stabbing at the gray sky. The closer she drew, the colder the air became, and the fog thickened until it licked at her shoes like smoke. She hesitated at the threshold, notebook clutched against her chest. Inside, the air was cooler still, damp and heavy. The scent of old stone and extinguished candles clung to every surface. She walked the aisle slowly, her footsteps echoing too loudly in the cavernous silence. The Reverend appeared from the shadows near the altar, tall and gaunt, his face a pale mask. His eyes locked onto hers with unsettling intensity. "You must be Clara," he said. Her stomach dropped. "How do you know my name?" He smiled faintly. "Greybrook is small. Word travels." She forced her voice steady. "The innkeeper said you keep records." "I do. I'm looking into the town's history. Disappearances mostly." For a moment, silence stretched. Then he gestured for her to follow. He led her through a side door into a study lined with shelves. Old leather-bound ledgers filled them, their spines cracked and brittle. A single oil lamp flickered on the desk, its flame guttering as if disturbed by a draft she couldn't feel. "Everything we've ever recorded is here," the Reverend said. "You're welcome to read." Clara set her notebook down, pulled the nearest ledger free. The pages were fragile, ink faded. Names, dates, births, deaths. Normal at first. But then, entries that stopped abruptly. Whole families listed one year, absent the next. Margins filled with strange notations, hollowed. Taken. Returned. Her pulse quickened. "What does this mean?" she asked, pointing. The Reverend's expression didn't change. "We have our own terms here. Our own ways." "They vanish," Clara pressed. "People vanish. Families, entire bloodlines. And you just write it down?" His eyes bored into hers. "The hollow ones take what they must. Greybrook survives. That is all you need to know." The words landed like stones in her gut. "The hollow ones?" she repeated, her voice breaking. But the Reverend closed the ledger with finality. "You've read enough for today." Clara felt the room tilt, the air pressing against her lungs. "Why did you let me in here then? Why answer any of my questions?" His smile this time was thin, sad. "Because you've already been chosen." Her throat constricted. Chosen for what? But he only turned back toward the altar, leaving her alone in the study. Clara staggered out of the church, the fog swallowing her. Her notebook felt heavier than ever, pages trembling in her hands. She flipped through her scribbled notes, until her breath caught. There were entries she hadn't written. Entire pages in her handwriting, though she had no memory of writing them. August 17th. They find me in the woods. I scream but no sound comes. They open me up and pour the hollow into me. My body is not mine. I walk Graybrook with a borrowed face. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She flipped faster, frantic. August 19th. They bury what's left of me beneath the farmhouse cellar. My bones ache with someone else's hunger. The ink was still damp. Clara dropped the notebook, breath shuddering in her throat. Around her, the fog seemed to pulse, every shadow lengthening toward her like grasping fingers. She didn't remember running back to the inn. Didn't remember slamming the door to her room and locking it. All she remembered was staring at the notebook, its pages spread wide on the floor, the words crawling across them like living things. Her hand ached. Ink stained her fingertips. She had written them. Somehow she had written them. Clara didn't leave her room that night. She couldn't. The notebook lay open on the floorboards, her own handwriting staring back at her in words she had no memory of writing. They bury what's left of me beneath the farmhouse cellar. Each time she read it, the letters seemed to shimmer, as though they wanted to wriggle free from the page and into her veins. Her pen rolled from the desk, tapping softly against the floor. The sound jolted her like a gunshot. She snatched it up, shoved both pen and notebook into her bag and sat on the bed with her back pressed hard to the wall. Every creak of the inn made her flinch. Every breath of wind through the shutters sounded like a whisper. When dawn finally came, pale light leaking into the room, Clara's eyes felt raw from sleeplessness. She knew one thing: she needed answers. The church loomed like a sentinel over the square. She told herself she wasn't going back, that confronting the Reverend again was reckless. The Reverend met her in the nave as though he had known she'd return. His expression was weary but unsurprised. "You've seen the words," he said quietly. "The writing that isn't yours yet is." Clara's throat tightened. "What's happening to me?" He studied her for a long moment, then gestured toward the altar. "Come." Every instinct screamed to run, but Clara followed. The air grew colder as he led her down a narrow stair hidden behind the altar, into a stone passage that smelled of damp earth and rust. "You need to understand," the Reverend murmured, holding a lantern aloft. "Graybrook is not cursed as outsiders might believe. It is protected. And protection demands sacrifice." The tunnel ended in a low-ceilinged chamber. Its walls were carved with the same symbols Clara had seen etched into doorframes. Circles slashed by jagged lines, always in threes. The marks pulsed faintly in the lantern light, as though inked with something that still breathed. In the chamber's center lay an open pit. The stench rising from it was unbearable. Rot soil, something chemical. Bones jutted from the dark earth below, tangled together in a grotesque embrace. Clara gagged, stumbling back. "What the hell?" "The hollow ones," the Reverend interrupted softly. "They rise from beneath. They hunger for vessels. Without sacrifice they spread. They consume. Graybrook has endured by feeding them only what they require. One every generation. One to hold them." Clara's pulse thundered. "You feed them people?" He met her gaze. "Without them the hollow ones would spill into the world. Do you understand? We contain them here. We suffer so others don't have to." She shook her head, trembling. "No. You lure people in. You trapped me." His silence was the only answer she needed. Clara staggered back toward the stairs, but the Reverend's voice followed her, low and urgent. "They've marked you already, Clara. You felt it. The writing. The whispers. You can't run. The hollows see through you. They know you." Her vision blurred with tears. She turned and bolted up the stairs, bursting back into the nave's dim light, lungs heaving. She didn't look back. She fled the church, sprinting across the square, ignoring the stares of the townsfolk. Their eyes followed her, calm, almost pitying. None tried to stop her. That, more than anything, filled her with terror. They knew where she'd go. They didn't need to stop her. The farmhouse. She didn't remember deciding, but her feet carried her down the dirt road into the woods, toward the rotting structure she'd seen on her first night. The air thickened as she approached, a weight pressing into her chest. The house sagged against the earth, its windows black hollows, its porch collapsing in on itself. The smell of mildew and decay wafted through the fog. Clara pushed inside, floorboards groaning beneath her weight. Dust swirled in the beam of her flashlight. She moved from room to room, each empty, stripped of furniture, as though abandoned in haste. Then she found the door to the cellar. Its handle was cold, slick. She pulled, and the door yawned open with a scream of rusted hinges. Stairs descended into darkness. Her breath quivered in her throat. She told herself to leave, to turn and run, but something deeper, more insidious, whispered otherwise. Down. The cellar air was colder still, carrying the same sour metal scent she'd noticed since her arrival. She descended slowly, each step bending under her weight. Her flashlight beam swept across the cellar. At first she thought the floor was uneven earth. Then she realized what she was seeing. Bones. Dozens of them. Rib cages collapsed like paper lanterns. Skulls caved in. Clothing clung to some rotted and damp. Her stomach lurched as the beam fell on something fresher. A denim jacket, its fabric barely decayed, the name Mark embroidered above the breast pocket. She recognized it from one of the missing persons posters she'd researched before coming. Clara staggered back, bile rising in her throat. Her flashlight quivered. And then, movement. In the far corner, where shadow pooled thickest, something shifted. Not a person. Not an animal. It was empty. The shape of a man, but faceless, skin like stretched wax, hollow where eyes should be. Its limbs twitched as though unused to motion. When it moved forward, its body crackled like old wood bending. Clara's scream caught in her throat. The hollow one tilted its blank face toward her, as though sniffing. Its mouth tore open, not a natural line but a splitting seam, spreading wider and wider until its jaw hung to its chest. From that yawning maw came a sound like wind through a grave. Clara. Her flashlight flickered violently. The notebook in her bag throbbed like a heartbeat against her hip. She turned and bolted up the stairs, the hollow scraping across the floor behind her, its limbs cracking unnaturally as it lurched forward. She threw herself through the farmhouse door into the choking fog. Branches clawed at her arms as she ran. The fog thickened, pressing in, twisting the trees into impossible shapes. Behind her, the sound of dragging, splintering footsteps grew louder, closer. She burst into a clearing, chest heaving, and collapsed to her knees. The farmhouse loomed behind her, silent once more. Nothing followed. But when she opened her notebook with trembling fingers, new words sprawled across the page, written in her own hand though she hadn't touched the pen. You cannot run from the hollow. You carry us already. Her fingers cramped around the notebook. For a long moment she couldn't breathe. Then she forced herself up, staggering toward town. She had to find a way out. She had to escape Graybrook. But even as she stumbled back into the square, every road out seemed to curve impossibly, looping back into the center again. The townsfolk watched her calmly, their smiles thin, rehearsed, as though they'd been waiting for this moment. And in their eyes, deep within their pupils, Clara saw the faint shimmer of hollowness. The roads betrayed her. Clara drove until her knuckles split white against the steering wheel, until her breath came in ragged gasps. But every twisting road through the fog curved back to the square. Always the square. The church spire looming above it, the inn waiting with its shuttered windows like watching eyes. She killed the engine and sat trembling, forehead pressed against the wheel. The silence swallowed the town whole. No birds. No insects. Just the low hum of fog pressing in, like a hand against her throat. The townsfolk stood scattered through the square, as if they had simply emerged from the mist. Bakers in their aprons, farmers in mud-stained boots, children holding hands. All of them smiling with that brittle, rehearsed politeness. "You can't leave," someone whispered. She didn't see who. Maybe all of them. Clara stumbled from the car, notebook clutched against her chest. Her voice broke when she screamed, "What do you want from me?" The crowd parted silently, like a curtain drawing back, revealing the reverend at the church steps. He raised a hand, beckoning. Inside, the nave glowed faintly with candlelight. The reverend's face was solemn as though carved from wax. "You feel them, don't you?" he said. "The hollow already pressing against your skin, seeping into your words." Clara's hands shook as she opened the notebook. New sentences unfurled across the page even as she watched. She comes to the church. She stands before him, trembling. She cannot fight what is already inside. Clara's hands shook as she opened the notebook. New sentences unfurled across the page even as she watched. She comes to the church. She stands before him, trembling. She cannot fight what is already inside. Her stomach turned. She snapped the book shut, shoved it back in her bag. "No. I won't let you do this. I won't be your sacrifice." The Reverend's expression softened, almost pitying. "It isn't us who choose. It's them. They mark who they will. We only keep the covenant." Covenant? To contain them here. To protect the rest of the world. Clara's chest heaved. "You're insane." He stepped closer. The candlelight painted his face in gold and shadow, hollowing his eyes. "Then why do you hear them whisper your name?" Her breath caught. She turned, bolting through the side door before he could stop her, sprinting into the night. The fog thickened as she ran, directionless, branches clawing at her clothes. The farmhouse drew her again, like a magnet she couldn't resist. She didn't want to go there, but her legs carried her anyway, stumbling through the clearing. The house leaned in the fog like a drunk, its windows black mouths. This time, Clara didn't hesitate. She ran to the porch, shoved the door open, and stormed inside. If they wanted her here, fine. She would face them here. Her flashlight beam swept the ruined rooms until it found the cellar door again. She descended, breath ragged. The cellar greeted her with that choking stench of decay. But now something moved. The bones shifted, rattling faintly. The denim jacket with the name Mark stretched as though filled by invisible breath. And from the far wall, the hollow one emerged again, skin like wax, face blank, limbs cracking. But it wasn't alone. Others peeled themselves from the shadows. Some tall, some shrunken. All faceless. All hollow. Clara backed against the wall, heart in her throat. Then her notebook snapped open in her bag, its pages fluttering wildly as though caught in a storm. Words bled across them. "She joins us. She is the vessel. She carries us beyond Graybrook." "No," Clara whispered. "No, no, no." The hollow moved closer, their limbs clicking, jaws splitting wide. Their voices poured into her mind like cold water flooding her skull. "You are empty already. You left your life behind. You left him. You left everything. We will fill you." Clara's chest convulsed with sobs. Her marriage, her career, her wreckage, all the failures she carried like anchors. Were they right? Was she hollow already? "No," she choked. "I'm not yours." She grabbed a rusted lantern from the wall, smashed it against the ground. Fire bloomed instantly, hungry and furious, leaping across the cellar floor. The hollow shrieked, not human screams but sounds like cracking ice, like earth splitting. Their bodies writhed in the fire, limbs twisting. Clara bolted up the stairs, smoke chasing her, lungs burning. She stumbled out of the farmhouse as flames licked through its broken windows, devouring the rot, roaring into the night. The hollow pressed against the glass, faceless heads tilting toward her. Their forms burned, melted, collapsed. Clara staggered back, coughing, tears streaming. The farmhouse blazed, fire climbing high, turning the fog orange. For the first time since arriving, she felt a rush of triumph. She'd destroyed them. She'd ended it. Morning broke gray and cold. The farmhouse smoldered, smoke curling into the sky. Clara walked back toward the square, hollow with exhaustion but certain she had survived. The townsfolk waited, gathered silently in front of the church. Their eyes fixed on her. The Reverend stepped forward. "It is done then." Clara's voice cracked. "I burned them. They're gone." His head tilted slightly. "You believe that?" Her breath stuttered. He stepped closer, voice low. "You cannot burn emptiness. Fire does not touch what has no flesh." Clara's heart dropped into her stomach. The crowd parted again, and in their faces she saw it, just for an instant. The shimmer, the hollow gleam. Not everyone, but enough. Dozens. Hundreds. Her knees weakened. "You're all vessels," the Reverend finished. "We do not banish the hollow. We contain them." And now, his gaze lingered on her, solemn, inevitable. "They contain you." Clara stumbled back, shaking her head. "No. No." Her notebook fell from her bag, landing open on the stones. Words scrawled themselves across the page. "She looks upon her reflection and sees us there." Clara's stomach clenched. She dropped to her knees, hands trembling, and snapped the book shut. The crowd closed in, not threatening, just watchful. Patient. She fled again, ran until her lungs burned. Somehow, impossibly, she found herself at the inn. Her car still waited, fog beating on its windshield. She climbed inside, slammed the door, and drove. This time the road didn't loop back. She sobbed with relief as the fog thinned, giving way to pale daylight, to open road. Fields stretched wide on either side, golden with morning sun. She kept driving until her hands steadied, until her breathing slowed. Hours later, she stopped at a gas station off the interstate. The air smelled blessedly of asphalt and gasoline. Normal smells. Normal life. Clara walked to the restroom, splashed cold water on her face, stared at herself in the mirror. For a moment, everything seemed fine. Then her reflection smiled, half a second late. Her stomach twisted violently. She stumbled back from the sink, shaking her head. No, no. But the reflection didn't stop. It tilted its head slowly, like a puppet testing its strings. And in her mind, in her own voice but deeper, emptier, came the whisper. "You carry us already."